morning. Today we have a special guest, an invited speaker from the Institute of Electronic Structure and Laser, Manolis Stratakis. Manolis got his PhD on physics from the University of Crete, and he is an old collaborator researcher in the Institute of Electronic Structure and Laser. He did postdoctoral studies in Berkeley, California, and he's a researcher at ISL since 2007. He's working on, I have to read that, novel ultra-fast laser-based techniques for micro and nano processing of materials, laser nanomaterial synthesis, and most importantly for biologists, fabrication of novel biomaterials as scaffolds for cell differentiation and tissue engineering. This is a very interesting, very hot interdisciplinary field.
Thank you, Nikki. I will continue in English. So, as I am giving a seminar in Institute of Molecular Biology and Biotechnology, I will focus today on our research, an outline of our research on biological applications of, let's say, how we can use our tool, which is a laser, ultra-fast lasers in particular, for materials processing. This is an emerging, exciting field that enables us ultimate control of light by matter and control of matter by light, allows single-volume photochemical processing based on nonlinear effects, and encourages fundamental studies of laser materials interaction that influence materials processing at primary time scales. So I would like to convince you that lasers, ultra-fast lasers, is an ideal tool for micro-nanoscale applications. And this is actually an outline of the activities of ultra-fast laser micro-nano processing lab in ISL. So we start from fundamentals of ultra-fast laser processing studies, ultra-fast laser materials processing, and with the feedback from the theory, we can realize different structures onto material surfaces, starting from micro-nanostructures, nanomaterials, different types of nanomaterials, including nanoparticles, layered materials, exfoliated materials, and we have taken advantage of this micro and nanostructure to apply to identify special weighting and microfluidic applications. Our next activity is in lasers in the application of lasers in organic photovoltaics. And in this activity, we can study either how to enhance the performance of this type of solar cells, or to increase their stability. And finally, this is a new trend now, is the application of lasers in two-dimensional materials, in graphene, let's say electronics, so we have an activity based on this type of materials. However, today I would like to speak about biomimetic tissue scaffolds, how we can use laser as a tool to have different types of tissue scaffolds that can be potentially used for tissue engineering applications. So, in the search of suitable materials, biomaterials for tissue scaffolds, it is realized that the ideal cell culture matrix should mimic the features of extracellular matrix sufficiently so that cells will function in the artificial medium as they would indeed. So, the importance of length scale is realized. So, it has been shown by Stevens and George that individual cells can recognize structures which have comparable dimensions to cellular size at the microscale, and natural scaffolds often derive properties from multi-scale or hierarchical structures. Here you can see, for example, the structure of the bone. You can see that it comprises multiple length scales starting from collagen molecules at the nanometer scale fiber bundles at the micrometer and lamellas, and finally at the macro scale, osteons, and this is actually the bone. So a multi-scale approach is especially important in mimicking living systems. So incorporation of both micro and nano topography is important to realize in cell scaffolds materials. But it is not only the topography, it is also the surface chemistry, what is said, the surface energy of the material. So we have shown this in this publication. We have started from a self-phobic surface. Here is a self-phobic surface. You can see it is superhydrophobic. So the surface can be switched to self-philic upon the incorporation of a very thin nanometric coating. So the surface is switched from a superhydrophobic to a superhydrophilic state, and from a self-phobic to a self-philic state. So this points us the importance of the synergy of the morphology and the chemistry, which is actually the surface chemistry. So our model to better simulate the extracellular matrix, the extracellular environment, is to study how cells respond in this type of scaffolds that comprise two length scales, micro and nano length scale. So you can have as a platform the micro scale, and you can tune the nano scale, the surface chemistry, through the nano entities on the top of the microstructures. This structure is inspired by nature. As you can see here, there are many paradigms in nature that can have extraordinary properties based on this micro and nanoscale morphology. Here you can see, for example, the water repellent properties of the colocasia leaf and many other plants, the remarkable adhesion properties of gecko-phytes, and remarkable flotation properties of water strikers. In all these examples, the secret behind this extraordinary property is structuring at both micro and nano scales, and always a synergy of the surface of this morphology with the chemistry plays a critical role. So this is our approach to realize this type of surfaces on top of solid materials. So following nature strategy, we follow a two-step process. In the first step, we use femtosecond laser structuring, ultra-fast laser structuring, on a solid surface, and in this way we can realize the micro and nano texture topography on the top of surface. The next step is to use different functionalization means in order to acquire the nanomorphology and to tailor the surface chemistry, and we end up with the final scaffold. Using this approach, you can realize this type of microconical periodic arrays of microconical structures on the top of surfaces. And if one can have a closer look at this type of microconical structures, we can see that there are also some spontaneously distributed nanoscale protrusions on the top of the microcones. You can see very well these protrusions here. So with direct laser structuring, we can have an ideal tool to tailor also the nanomorphology, the micromorphology, but also the nanoscale morphology as well. The similarity between the artificial and the natural surface, as you can see here in this transparency, is remarkable, both in terms of morphological characteristics as well as in terms of the hydrophobic properties. So you can see here that both the artificial and the natural surface comprises these microconical structures that are decorated with protrusions at the nanoscale. And this technique is actually universal. We can have this type of microconical morphology on different types of surfaces, including semiconducting, metallic surfaces, and polymeric ones. And also, you can use these hard solid surfaces as a template and replicate this structure in in different types of soft polymeric materials. For example, here you can see some examples in Ormocell and PLGA surfaces. Not only we can acquire this type of morphology, but also we can tune the morphology from starting from a polished, a flat, smooth surface, going to the highest roughness we can produce by applying different laser parameters. For example, here is the variation of laser intensity. So you can see that upon varying this intensity, one can have different micro roughness on the top of the solid surface, and also different wettabilities, different surface areas. And this is the effect of chemistry now. If one can have a hydrophobic coating on the top of these surfaces, you can tune using the different parameters the wettability from a hydrophobic to a super hydrophobic state. You can see it here. However, if you have a hydrophilic coating, then one can switch from a hydrophobic state to a super hydrophilic state. So in this case, the surface is completely wettable. So we have our target is, of course, tissue engineering applications, but we focus more on neural tissue engineering applications using these micro nanospike scaffolds. And here I can explain what is our aim. In the first step, we use this cell culture conductive micro nano materials as a platform to realize functional neural networks on the top of the structures. In the second step, we, assuming that we realize these functional neural networks, we can interface them, because as you can see, we can realize the structures on conductive materials, so we can use the conductivity of these materials to interface neural networks that are developed onto the structures. And using this combined knowledge, the ultimate goal is to use this combined knowledge in order to realize tissue engineering scaffolds for nerve tissue regeneration, in order to address some problems that related to neural diseases, neuronal diseases. So this is we start our effort using common cell lines, and this is we first started the study of PC12 cell response on this type of scaffolds. PC12 cells is a good model, is a useful model for the study of neuronal differentiation, since in the presence of the nerve growth factor, they obtain the phenotype of sympathetic neurons. So we have initiated our studies by studying the neuronal differentiation on this type of laser structured surfaces. So this is a series of laser structured surfaces in the low, medium, and high roughness. And as we increase the laser fluence, for example, the roughness increases, and here you can see that the wettability increases as well. And in the presence of nerve growth factor, you can see here the different response, the differential response of the cells culture, the PC12 cells culture on these surfaces, as you can see from immunostaining results and scanning electron microscopy images. You can see that in the low and mid roughness, cells can be well differentiated and develop a neural network. However, this is not the case in highly rough surfaces where there is no differentiation of PC12 cells. Here you can see that the differentiation rate, the percentage of cells that are differentiated as a function of the type of roughness, and you can see here that in this type of roughnesses, in the low and mid roughnesses, there is cell differentiation is observed. But this is not the case in high roughness. So this behavior, despite the presence of nerve growth factor, we have no differentiation of PC12 cells. And this behavior is directed by the morphology, the substrate morphology alone. And in the sense of different parameters, morphological parameters that can influence this or inhibit this cell differentiation, we have realized that the interspike distance, this distance is a critical parameter to tune, let's say, cell differentiation. You can see here is a picture of cell in low rough surfaces. You can see here that in low the posts are not comparable to the dimension of the cell. However, in the high roughness surfaces, cells that are not differentiated are the size of the cells is comparable to the interspike area. So, so among these different parameters, the interspike area is most when the interspike area becomes comparable to the interspike to the cell size, no differentiation is observed. Another useful investigation we have here is that you can see here how cells are grown at the top of the spikes. Here you can see the upper neurite, the lower neurite, and you can see here, this is, it's not very clear, but you can see here that the cells were grown at the top of spikes, but they sense the space of the 3D roughness via the neuritic extensions. Actually, we have a three-dimensional development of these neurites on among the space between the spikes. The next step now is to switch to in vitro primary cultures, and to this end we have started with cortical neurons, mouse Z14, and ganglia, dorsal root, mouse Z13.5, and this is done in collaboration with Martin Gravans and Johannes Anamopoulos from the medical school in the University of Crete. And starting from cortical neurons on the top of these structures, we observed that only in the low rough surface, in the hydrophilic ones, neurons can grow. So this is the result of immunostaining microscopy of antipetat-free tubulin antibody of these neurons on the top of these structures. And here is cell microscopy of a neural axon. You can see here the attachment sites of the axon with the microspikes. But the most important observation we have here, and here the culture is in the absence of growth factors. There is no growth factor or ECM based proteins that can can promote the growth of neurons. You can see here that we can observe a three-dimensional web of cytoplasmic processes, and actually this is indeed the three-dimensional web. You can see here that these neuritic extensions can be grown at different height levels from the top of spikes towards the base. As you can see here, here some extension on the top, in the middle, and on the base of microspikes. So the next step is to culture dorsal ganglia in SCG neurons on the top of structures. You can see here the different the culture of SCGs on the different of the different roughnesses. As you can see here, while in the low roughness there is no preferential orientation of SCGs, you can see preferential orientation on mid and high roughness, and this preferential orientation, as you can see, is directed from morphological features, from solid morphological features. So here is a quantification of the development of this type of networks on the top of low roughness and high roughness. As you can see, here is the percentage of axons that are oriented at an angle between 0 and 30 degrees, 30 and 60 degrees, and 60 and 90 degrees, 60 to 90 degrees, and you can see that in the high roughness substrates there is, so this is the low, the blue is the low, the red is the high, so you can see that it's a preferential orientation in the high roughness compared to the low roughness substrates. And as I told you, this comes solely from geometrical means. Here is a top view of the different types of surfaces used, the low roughness, the mid roughness, and the high roughness. And here is binary images, image processed. These pixels are image processed, so to give us binary images, 0, 1 images. So you can see here that while in the low roughness there is a spontaneous orientation of these posts, here you can see that there is an elongation of these posts in the mid and high roughness case. And actually, this is governed by the laser polarization, the polarization of the electric field of the laser. You can see here that this post, the top of this post, is elongated in a specific direction when it is polarized, it is vertically polarized, and this, and then if the polarization is changed, then this direction changes, so you have again elongation of the top of the spikes. However, when the electric field is circularly polarized, then we have a circular top of the spikes. So this ability to have different types of roughnesses on the top of solid surfaces can allow us for self-patterning as well. Here you can see on the same scaffold, you can see different areas with low and mid roughness, and here is a flat area, a flat silicon area that it is between the low and mid roughness. As we can see in the low roughness, there is a spontaneous orientation, and when one goes to the mid roughness, there is a specific orientation of the Schwann cells on the top of the structure. Here now I can present you the result of all explants, DRGs. As you can see here,
why is changing with the polarization? Why is changing with the polarization?
The directionality of this.
Yes.
This is okay. This is an interesting effect of laser materials interaction. So it starts from a modulation, which is sinusoidal modulation of the belt. Okay. Then you have upon this when we have this sinusoidal modulation, then you have a concentration
of what?
Modulation of the melt. So the material is melted with the interaction of the laser pulses. Okay.
You interfere two passes, right?
No, you have one pass.
One
pass. So you have melting, and then you have a sinusoidal modulation of the melt. That is
why?
Because it is governed by the modulation of the electric field. Okay. So we have
where is the surface? I mean
on the surface of the material. So the surface is melted. Okay.
Yes, and why you have sinusoidal on the surface?
Because the electric field modulates. Okay.
Yeah, but this is merged out in time.
Yes, it's merged out in time.
So there is no sinusoidal.
Before the resolidification of this layer of material, then you have concentration. So this sinusoidal modulation works like a lens for the incident beam. So you have this creation of spikes, and this modulation it depends on the laser polarization.
So that means you have sinusoidal because of some interference, or you have sinusoidal just from the pulse itself?
We have an interference of the incident wave with the surface plasma wave that is excited on the surface. So you have this sinusoidal modulation. We have an incident wave and a surface scattered wave, which is actually plasma-induced surface plasma wave, that it is excited along the surface. The interference of these two give the sinusoidal modulation of the metal. And this is the beginning of the creation of these structures. Let me say, the beginning is the creation of ripples. Okay, that the wavelength of these ripples is 800 nanometers, the periodicity. Okay? Because of the interference of the incident and the surface scattered wave. Okay? If we create this type of ripples, then you end up, the next step is the creation of microgroups with a periodicity of 1.5 microns, and the composition, let's say, of these microgroups gives rise to this type of micropoles on the top of the surface. And always this phenomenon is dependent on the laser polarization. So the ripples are perpendicular to the laser polarization. The groups are created parallel to the laser polarization. Okay? So as you can see here, you can use the laser polarization in order to achieve different types of structures, the morphology, different type of morphologies on the top of silicon surface. And this is a self-arcing effect. And here are the results for the whole explants. You can see here in the low roughness we have a isotropic cell outgrowth of the neurons that can grow out of the explant. Whereas it's not very well visible, but you can see it later. Here you can see that in the high roughness surface you can see an anisotropic cell outgrowth. Here is the orientation, the preferred orientation that is discovered by the microbuttered silicon surfaces under the whole extent. And here I can stress that this outgrowth occurs without coating. It is directed by the micro pattern silicon surfaces alone. Here you can see how we can explain this type of elongation. It is highly probable that the migrating glial cells create a carpet onto which the neurites are outgrown. So here you can see a scanning electron microscopy of this orientation of the glial cells, of the Schwann cells, that can direct the neuronal axis orientation. Here also you can see some very fascinating scanning electron microscopy images of axons that are outgrown from the explant. And here you can see a sequence of confocal microscopy images when you can see with red is neurons and the Schwann cells is with the green. You can see that actually neurons follow the Schwann cells that are oriented along this direction, and the neurons can follow them. Now, the next step is to study, and the current research is to study the neural stem cells on the top of this type of silicon scaffolds, and this is done now in collaboration with Achilleas and Yannis in the framework of the 3D neuroscaffold project. Now, what I said is that from the one hand we try to create functional neuronal networks using micro nano silicon scaffolds, contacted ones. The next step is to interface this type of neural networks, and we take advantage of the conductivity of our surfaces, of the substrates, to interface this. So we can interface this type of, actually this is a different class, let's say, of neural networks. It's actually, while the substrates are 2.5D structure, these neural networks are of 3D nature. So it's very important to let's say, to study what is the difference between two-dimensional neural networks on a surface compared to three-dimensional ones. So our approach toward this direction is to use, on the one hand, the silicon CMOS technology. You can have this structural surface on top of silicon, so you can take advantage of silicon CMOS technology to interface this type and map the neuronal activity of this type of networks. And the second step toward this direction is to, let's say, to realize a 3D multi-electrode array based on silicon spikes. So there are commercially available multi-electrode arrays based on silicon. So we can modify these arrays. Here is the concept. We can modify. Here is the MedPro. This is the commercially available multi-electrode array probe that we use in order to study this difference. So we are collaborating with Kei Hosokawa from Health Research Institute in Japan, and the idea is to grow among in the area among the electrodes spikes, microconical structures, silicon spikes, and then compare this case when we have a planar development of neural networks with this case when we have a three-dimensional neural network. And the realization of these arrays is rather complex. I will not get into details. Here are the different steps required to start from the initial multi-electrode array surface and end up to a microconical one. Here is the result. This is the initial array. In this space, there are the electrodes, the sensing electrodes, in these lines here, and the area, in these areas among the electrodes are microstructured in order to have a 3D micro nanosilicon array. And now cell cultures are performed on this type in order to understand what are actually the properties of these networks grown in these arrays. So this is the end, and I would like to thank the contributors of this work, mostly students, and Harasi Niji, Marius Barberu, and all these students that they helped in the realization of scaffolds and the cultures. My colleagues, Professor Kostas Fotakis, which is the head of the lab, Athira Nella, which is at the heart of, she's a biologist, she's at the heart of most of the results presented here. Professor Akil Ravanis, Yannis Karlamopoulos, Claire Lavanis, Yannis Karlamopoulos, and Irina Thanasakis. And I would like to thank you very much for your attention. This is funding. This is most of the activities are supported by the Laser Lab Europe in the joint research activity Bioptical, the 3D Neuroscaffolds project, which is led by Akil Ravanis, and the CRIPIS, and now the CRIPIS BioSys project. And with this, I would like to thank you for your attention. There is, as I told you, the technique is universal. You can realize on top of polymers, on top of metals. So also you can replicate the structure using a solid scaffold to a plastic material, a soft material. So you can, in general, you can use it. You can have this structure on different types of materials.
And when you compare 3D with 2D structure, does the 3D structure gives you some better features? What is the reason why you, for example, discuss what the 3D structure can give me in application towards the 2D structures?
The concept is simple. The ACM, the extracellular matrix, is not a planar two-dimensional surface. It has certain features that can start from the molecules, nanoscale, and then microscale. So the length scale and the synergy of length scales, the hierarchy, let's say, of length scales is very important. So this is why one should study 3D scaffolds and compare them with many studies that have been applied to two-dimensional captures.
I see. In application, does it give you some better surface for certain things, or?
Yes. As you can see here, it's very difficult to have, let's say, this oriented morphology of actions using a 2D surface, unless you can have a pattern. So at least one one important result here is that we can have a pattern that you can direct the growth of neurons on the top of surface,
Having the 3D structure.
for example.
Yeah.
But many other things, for example, you can compute the surface energy, which is different to realize on two-dimensional material. So the contrast between the different surface energies you can have on 2D materials is very low. Here you can expand this contrast.
Have you tested the interaction between different types of surfaces, different materials and biological systems, like trying to do cell cultures on different types, not just silica, titanium, let's say, or the other types of materials?
Not yet, because, okay, you can see here it's a lot of work. Yes, it's a lot of work even on silicon, on silica, you say. But this is silicon, it's not silica. It's not oxidized silicon, it's silicon, most of times. Some results have been obtained to replicate in surfaces that comprise, let's say, PLGA type of materials or almost materials. We have not yet results on metallic surfaces. But in principle, it's a good idea to see what is if the material itself is important. But as you can see here, as I show you, it's important. The surface chemistry is always important. So it will be different for sure.
Except for the spike couple, if I understood well, this is good for neural cells only. Okay?
No.
If you are no,
Yeah.
but you have worked with it. If one is interested in other cell types, I mean, are you going to change? I mean, have you tried these spikes for other cell types?
Yes.
Apparently.
We have started, for example, our first, let's say, study was related to fibroblasts. Behavior of fibroblasts on the top of these structures. And you have seen differential, of course we can see, we have shown the differential behavior because you can tune the surface energy of the surfaces. The morphology, and if you have a constant chemistry, then you can tune it from the low structural effects to high roughness effects. So, in principle, you have a tool to vary this roughness, to vary the surface energy, and so on. So, in principle, you can use it for other types of cells as well. We focused on neural cells because you can have these surfaces on conductive materials.